Hello everyone, I'm Crispin Huxley with Age of Liberty. I wanted to provide my first video here with some powerful content, so I thought there would be nothing better than to delve into a review of a great book called The Creature from Jekyll Island. This is a book written by G. Edward Griffin, who has been a powerful voice in exposing government corruption and for promoting individual liberty for many years. The Creature from Jekyll Island is a book that explains the secret, corrupt process in which the Federal Reserve of the United States was created. Not many people know too much about the Federal Reserve, but I can tell you that it is neither federal nor a reserve. Like the Affordable Care Act or the Patriot Act, its title has nothing to do with the true nature of its existence. It's in fact a private collective of central banks, a cartel, that has a monopoly on our monetary system. It has the power to control our political policies and the economic conditions we experience. In the preface to The Creature from Jekyll Island, Griffin explains that in his research he discovered that the true events behind the creation of the Federal Reserve veer far from the commonly accepted myths. The person who chooses to accept the reality we are experiencing, and heaven forbid, convey that message to someone else, will likely be suspected of tinfoil hat paranoia. Well, we're not going to back away from telling the truth, so we're going to go ahead and write off the naysayers as unfortunate sheeple of the establishment. You taking the time to watch this is great evidence of your willingness to learn and seek out truths instead of simply accepting everything that the establishment wants you to believe. So what is the Federal Reserve? We need to do a little bit of warming up to the concept of banking before we can dive right into the history of the Federal Reserve, because the Fed is a centralized banking system. Let's read through a hypothetical question and answer session that is included in The Creature from Jekyll Island that will put the concept of banking into perspective for you. This exercise was created in 1957, so the monetary figures will seem low, but you'll get the point. Most of us have bank accounts and are familiar with banks, but banking, or the banking system, is something that we don't often have a grasp of entirely. So let's ask the question. What are banks for?
To make money.
For the customers?
For the banks.
Why doesn't bank advertising mention this?
It would not be in good taste, but it is mentioned by implication in references to reserves of $249 million or thereabouts. This is the money that they have made.
Out of the customers?
I suppose so.
They also mention assets of $500 million or thereabouts. Have they made that too?
Not exactly. That is the money they use to make money.
I see. And they keep it in a safe somewhere?
Not at all. They lend it to customers.
Then they haven't got it?
No.
Then how is it assets?
They maintain that it would be if they got it back.
But they must have some money in a safe somewhere.
Yes, they do. Usually $500 million or thereabouts. This is called liabilities.
But if they've got it, how can they be liable for it?
Because it isn't theirs.
Then why do they have it?
It has been lent to them by customers.
You mean customers lend banks money?
In effect, they do. They put money into their accounts, so it is really lent to the banks.
And what do the banks do with it?
Lend it to other customers.
But you said that money they lent to other people was assets.
Yes.
Then assets and liabilities must be the same thing.
You can't really say that.
But you've just said it. If I put $100 in my account, the bank is liable to have to pay it back, so it's liabilities. But they go and lend it to someone else, and he is liable to have to pay it back, so it's assets. It's the same $100, isn't it?
Yes, but...
Then it cancels out. It means, doesn't it, that banks haven't really any money at all?
Theoretically.
Never mind theoretically. And if they haven't any money, where did they get their reserves of $249 million or thereabouts?
I told you, this is the money they have made.
How?
Well, when they lend your $100 to someone, they charge him interest.
How much?
It depends on the bank rate, say 5.5%. That's their profit.
Why isn't it my profit? Isn't it my money?
It's the theory of banking practice that
When I lend them $100, why don't I charge them interest?
you do.
You don't say. How much?
It depends on the bank rate. Say 0.5%.
Grasping of me, rather?
That's only if you're not going to draw the money out again.
But of course I'm going to draw it out again. If I hadn't wanted to draw it out again, I could have buried it in the garden, couldn't I?
They wouldn't like you to draw it out again.
Why not? If I keep it there, you'll say it's liability. Wouldn't they be glad if I reduce their liabilities by removing it?
No, because if you remove it, they can't lend it to anyone else.
But if I wanted to remove it, they'd have to let me.
Certainly.
But suppose they've already lent it to another customer.
Then they'll let you have someone else's money.
But suppose he wants his too, and they've let me have it.
You're being purposely obtuse here.
I think I'm being acute. What if everyone wanted their money all at once?
It's the theory of banking practice that they would never do that.
So what banks bank on is not having to meet their commitments?
I wouldn't say that.
Naturally. Well, if there's nothing else you think you can tell me...
Quite so. Now you can go off and open a banking account.
Okay, just one last question.
Of course.
Wouldn't I do better to go off and open up a bank? Wow. Interesting stuff, huh? We learned that, like with many businesses, a bank is in the business of building a profit by collecting interest on your money. Nothing extraordinarily complex, but banks can run into trouble when customers have a run on the bank, or currency draining depletes the cash that the bank has on hand. These are a few problems that were addressed in the development of the Federal Reserve. The important thing to remember here before going into more detail is that the Federal Reserve is comprised of a cartel collective of banks. And as with most things involving human beings, those involved in setting up the Federal Reserve did so with the objective of benefiting and profiting for themselves. We'll dive down the rabbit hole of the Fed's insane history in the next video. If you'd like to get a head start, visit our store and pick up a copy of G. Edward Griffin's book for yourself. There's a link to it in the description. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again soon.